Tonight's reading is from John chapter 11 and verses 45 to the end of the chapter. It should be on the screen behind me. And in the church Bibles, it's on page 1078. Therefore, many of the Jews who had come to visit Mary and had seen what Jesus did believed in him. But some of them went to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus had done. Then the chief priests and the Pharisees called a meeting of the Sanhedrin. "What are we accomplishing?" they asked. "Here is this man performing many signs. If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him. And then the Romans will come and take away both our temple and our nation." Then one of them, named Caiaphas, who was high priest that year, spoke up. "You know nothing at all. You do not realize that it is better for you that one man die for the people than that the whole nation perish." He did not say this on his own, but as high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus would die for the Jewish nation, and not only for that nation, but also for the scattered children of God, to bring them together and make them one. So from that day on, they plotted to take his life. Therefore, Jesus no longer moved about publicly among the people of Judea. Instead, he withdrew to a region near the wilderness, to a village called Ephraim, where he stayed with his disciples. When it was almost time for the Jewish Passover, many went up from the country to Jerusalem for their ceremonial cleansing before the Passover. They kept looking for Jesus, and as they stood in the temple courts, they asked one another, "What do you think? Isn't he coming to the festival at all?" But the chief priests and the Pharisees had given orders that anyone who found out where Jesus was should report it so that they might arrest him. This is God's word.
Good evening. Thank you, Neil. Sorry, I don't know why I did that. I just moved that. Is that okay? Yeah, I just moved the microphone randomly. Never mind. Well, in August 22, I went to Old Trafford, the cricket ground, not the football stadium. Wouldn't do that. And I went to watch some Test cricket. And I'm going to set the scene a little bit. I feel like I need to set the scene with a few details of cricket, but I will keep it brief, because let's be honest, those that would care for that already know, and those that don't know probably don't care. But cricket, Test cricket, takes place over 5 days. Play starts at 11 a.m., goes on till 6 p.m., and you've got 5 days of that length of time to complete the match. Both teams have 2 goes at batting, and so to win, you have to bowl the other team out twice and have more runs than them at the end. That's how you win. Well, I went to, it was England against South Africa. It was day 3 of 5, so right in the middle. And so far, on days 1 and 2, it all gone England's way. South Africa batted first and were bowled out for very, very few runs. England then, in their innings, had stretched a huge lead over South Africa. And so coming into day 3 now, it was simple. England needed to bowl South Africa out for less than 264 runs. Okay, there's a point to this, don't worry. If we could do that, then we would win. It was highly unlikely that all 10 batters would be bowled out in this one day, and it's pretty rare that a test match ends on day 3. But we went along, not really knowing what we would see. And England started well, and in the first hour, they took 3 wickets. So we, as fans, began to get a bit excited that if this carries on at this rate, we will see the end of this match today. But South Africa, they put a bit of resolve in, went ultra-defensive, and hour after hour went by with no more wickets being taken. It literally got to the point where people were falling asleep in the crowd. It was that boring. I went with a friend. He was sat this side of me on my right, and on the other side, there were 2 guys that I'd been talking to from Nottingham. They had come up on the Friday. They'd stayed overnight, and now they were sat down watching the cricket next to me. And that little bit of hope in that first hour that we might see a result had really got them going, and they were desperate to see the end of this match. to the point where they had this great idea that maybe we could stay for day 4. So one of them gets out his phone and he goes on the internet and he finds 2 tickets available for day 4, and so he buys them. Then the other guy, he messages the Airbnb host to make sure they can stay over, so they've got somewhere to stay, and that's successful as well. Then both of them ring up their partners and grovel because they've now agreed and put everything in place for an extra night stay before they've even asked for permission or got in touch at all. Everything is sorted. They will be coming to day 4 of the test match. By this point, the game has slowed down massively, and there is an hour left of play on day 3, and England still need 5 wickets. And so they look at their watches, having become very bored with the cricket, having noticed that the football is about to kick off, and having put all of their ducks in line for day 4, they decide that they will leave, go to the pub across the road, and watch the football. And as they leave to great fanfare. They tell us all that we're all losers because we're going to sit through this boring hour of cricket while they're going to go and watch the football in the pub and come back the next day and see the end of the match that we would all love to see, but we can't see because we're not coming back tomorrow. And you know what comes next, don't you? I reckon they'd probably been out of the stadium maybe a couple of minutes, and England get a wicket. And as England's wicket fell, so did the South African resolve. And so then wicket followed wicket, and in that last hour, before the hour was even up, the match was over. All the wickets had been taken, and there was nothing for these 2 guys to come back to the next day. Me and my friend, we just laughed, and we would have loved to have been a fly on the wall as these 2 guys, in their pride, had left, and then they looked at their phones to see that the match was over. They made a decision based on false assumptions and false confidence, and the irony is that they missed the ending that they were so desperate to see. False assumptions, false confidence, and an irony which results in people missing something that they really want. That's what we have in John 11. As I read this passage, that whole activity, that day at the test match, came back to my mind because that's exactly what we see here. We see a very big decision is made based on false assumptions and false confidence. And the whole thing is just covered in irony. I think John is deliberately doing this as he's writing this bit. He wants us to feel this ironic sense of everything that's going on. These people think they know all that they're doing, and yet really they have no idea. So what's happened? Well, Jesus, as we saw last week, he is healed, he is risen, resurrected Lazarus from the grave. His friend Lazarus has died, and Jesus has come and he's brought him back to life. At the sound of his voice and the command of Jesus, Lazarus comes out of the grave. And we read, verse 45, "Therefore many of the Jews who had come to visit Mary and had seen what Jesus did believed in him." So people have witnessed all of this, and they have come before Jesus, and they have believed in him. They have decided that he is who he claimed to be, and they want to follow after him. But some of them, they go back to Jerusalem, and their hearts are hardened, and they report to the Pharisees all that's happened, and an emergency meeting has taken place. What are they going to do about this man, Jesus? And we see, firstly, then, in these few verses, we see this false assumption that is made. There's false assumptions made by these Pharisees in this meeting. What are we accomplishing, they ask. That is more literal. What are we going to do? What is happening here? Here is this man performing many signs. If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him, and then the Romans will come and take away both our temple and our nation. What is their assumption? Their assumption is that if they allow Jesus to carry on doing what he is doing, then they will lose everything. They will lose their temple and their nation. There's the word temple there, it's our place, which has been translated temple here. Some people believe it's more of a kind of a position of authority that they, as the Pharisees, have. It's this idea of everything that they have and hold dear can be taken away. that Jesus is a threat to their lives and all that they love. And so that is what they assume would happen if they are to leave things as they currently are. But we know, don't we, that these are false assumptions. That Jesus actually is no threat to the Romans. And as the chapters go on, we'll see that even as he's placed before a Roman judge, he is considered innocent. He's no threat. Him going about doing miracles is not going to result in the Romans coming and destroying their temple and nation. And the irony is that they really don't understand who this man is. There is an irony in these words, in the sense that they, as Pharisees, they know what to look out for the Messiah, and they long for the Messiah to come. The Jewish people, they wanted a Messiah to come and deliver them from the Romans. And yet now they stand there and they say that actually this may happen, but their Messiah would not be strong enough to rescue them. There is a deep sense of irony. They don't disbelieve in Jesus. I think this is quite crucial. They don't disbelieve in Jesus because there's no evidence for his claims. As Jesus claims to be the Messiah, as he claims to be the Savior that will come and deliver them, it's not that there's a lack of evidence. Notice what they say. Here is this man performing many signs. Many signs. The prophets of old have declared that a Messiah would come, a Savior would be born. And there's many things that they're to look out for, one of which is that he would come performing miracles. And here is Jesus performing many signs. And they know that this man is believable, that he puts forward a compelling case, because if they leave it as he is, then everyone will believe in him. See, that as they look at Jesus, they see a man who is doing things that only God can do, who is fulfilling the prophecy, and who, if this allows to continue, everyone will believe. And yet they themselves cannot see it. They themselves do not believe and trust in him. Remember, John is writing all of this. John chapter 20, verse 31. He's writing all of this that we might know and believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing we may have life in his name. And so John, as he's writing this, he is showing us that all the evidence is there for us to see who Jesus is. And yet the people who should know best, they don't see, and they don't believe. There's further irony as well, in the sense that what they do is they kill Jesus, and a few years after that, the Romans come in and destroy their temple and their nation. So they say we must act so that we don't lose these things, and they did act, and they still lost those things. There's an irony there as well, and there's a deeper irony too, in that what is it that they cling hold to? What is it that they long for so much? They long for their temple, for their temple and their nation, the significance that they have, the things that make them Jews. And what we find in these things is actually that Jesus is what they desire. Jesus, that the temple is a picture of Jesus. That the Judaism religion points us to Jesus. What is it that they long for? Well, really, deep down, they long for Jesus. Jesus is the temple. We see this all the way through the Bible, right at the very beginning, in Genesis, in the Garden of Eden. It's said by the Lord that if you eat of the fruit, you will die. And as they eat of the fruit, they are separated from God. They are spiritually dead, cut away from the Lord. And there is this thing which happens where God and man live together, and now they don't. And what we see in the temple is a partial reinstatement of that. As God comes and lives amongst men on the earth, but within the confines of this temple with a veil covering it. It's been described as a big keep out sign. That God now dwells again with man, but it's at arm's at arm's reach. And as we see the life of Jesus, and as we watch on as he dies on the cross, what do we see? Well, that big keep out sign is ripped up, isn't it? And in Jesus we have the fulfillment, and God once again lives and dwells with man. Jesus, the picture that the temple paints to us is of how Jesus can make us right with God, that God and man can live together once again. Interestingly, in Mark's gospel, when Jesus is arrested and brought before the Sanhedrin, they have people come and make up stories against him falsely as a way of trying to get him to be declared guilty. And we read this, "Then some stood up and gave this false testimony against him. We heard him say, 'I will destroy this temple made with human hands, and in 3 days will build another not made with hands.' Yet even their testimonies did not agree." That's based on an actual event that did happen, but they've kind of twisted it so much that they can't agree on exactly what happened. But Jesus did declare of the temple, "Destroy it, and in 3 days I will rebuild it." What he was talking about was not a physical temple, but what happened 3 days after Jesus died. Well, he rose again. So the temple, the thing that they desire and long for the most, is actually fulfilled in Jesus. False assumptions and a deep sense of irony as they miss the very thing that's right in front of their eyes. And I think there's a challenge to us here. Is what are we blinded by? Do we understand and see who Jesus truly is? We don't disbelieve because of a lack of evidence. It's all there to see. As we see in the Gospels who Jesus is and what he did, we see that he is the one that came in order that we might have life, and life to the full. But sometimes the things that we cling on to, the things that we hold dearest to, the things that we use to identify ourselves can blind us to see who Jesus truly is. And it stops us from following him, or it stops us from trusting in him. We have false assumptions that, well, if I become a Christian, then this might happen. If I make this kind of a decision to stand for Christ, well, then this might happen. And we have these ideas of what may happen if we choose to follow after Jesus, when actually what we really need and desire is him. And so we see there the false assumptions, and while they're talking amongst themselves, debating what they should do, there is one of them, verse 49, named Caiaphas, who was high priest that year. And we see here a false confidence. Caiaphas has a lot of confidence in himself and his own plan. Potentially this comes from him being high priest. And so as high priest, he stands up and he speaks to them quite abruptly, doesn't he? You know nothing at all. You know nothing at all, he says. You do not realize that it is better for you that one man die for the people than that the whole nation perish. Caiaphas stands up confidently and says, stop talking. Jesus must die. And if Jesus dies, well, then we're saved. And he has an extreme confidence in this plan to the point where it is then brought into action. Verse 53, so from that day on, they plotted to take his life. But again, there's enormous irony in here. I think that John has done this deliberately, and I love it. That he stands up and says, you know nothing at all, and then John, in his little author note, basically says he didn't really have a clue what he was saying. Because what is happening here, well, he tells us, verse 51, he did not say this on his own, but as high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus would die for the Jewish nation. Not only for that nation, but also for the scattered children of God, to bring them together and make them one. That when Caiaphas stands up and declares that Jesus must die in order to save the nation, he doesn't understand the depth to his words, does he? Jesus must die in order that we might be saved. He means on a physical level, and so he willingly sends an innocent man to his death because, interestingly, it is better for him. That's what he says to them, isn't it? Verse 50, you do not realize it is better for you that one man die. It is more convenient, actually, that we allow this innocent man to die. It's more beneficial. It's not about what's right in the mind of Caiaphas here. It's not about what's moral. It's not about what is good. It's about what's best for him and his friends. And so he willingly allows this innocent man to become a wanted man, thinking it might save his temple and his nation. There is a deep sense of irony here. And as high priest, he offers up a sacrifice he has no idea about. It was the job of the high priest once a year to go into the Holy of Holies and offer a sacrifice before the Lord to take the life of an innocent animal in order that sins might be forgiven. And here now, as high priest, he signs the death warrant for Jesus Christ without realizing exactly what he's doing. But we see that God is in control of all these things. And God is not taken by alarm by this decision that's made, but actually he is working in it and through it. God's plan will come about. God intended that Jesus Christ would go to the cross in order that he might save his people. And here, from the words of this man who does it with murderous intent, who does it with a desire to save himself, brings about God's plan and God's will. That God might be glorified and that Christ might be glorified. It's interesting, isn't it? In the beginning of chapter 11, Jesus hears that Lazarus is sick. And he says, this illness will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it. He says that the whole event with Lazarus will bring about something else that will happen, that Jesus will be glorified in that. And we see that partially, don't we, as he raises Lazarus from the dead and many believe in him. And Jesus is glorified, and God is glorified through Jesus. But actually, Christ is ultimately glorified through his death and resurrection. And what happens from the raising of Lazarus is a chain of events that result in the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. That as a result of raising Lazarus, some go to the Jewish leaders and report him, and then there's this meeting that's held. At the meeting, this decision is made. As a result of that, there is a kind of a wanted campaign against Jesus, which results in his follower Judas handing him over to him then being crucified on the cross. And the night before Jesus is betrayed, the night before he dies, this is what he says to his disciples. They're in the upper room. Judas has just gone out. As soon as Judas had taken the bread, he went out, and it was night. And when he was gone, Jesus said, now the Son of Man is glorified, and God is glorified in him. If God is glorified in him, God will glorify the Son in himself, and will glory him at once. See, Jesus says, now the Son of Man is glorified. All of this is under the control of God. Jesus knows exactly what's going to happen. And he knows that he will go to a cross, but in his death and resurrection, he will be glorified, and God will be glorified through it. So there is, again, a deep sense of irony here. A decision made on a false confidence. And Caiaphas misses what's plain in front of his face. That Jesus Christ is the one who came, that he might be glorified as the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. And again, there's a challenge to us, isn't there? As we look at this, and it's very easy to be critical of these people, but I think that there's a Caiaphas in all of us, isn't there? And what is it that we hold on to so dear and so tightly that we are willing to put Jesus out of the picture because that makes it awkward and uncomfortable. Caiaphas, he does away with Jesus because it is more beneficial to him. And I think there's a challenge to us in that there's times when we, too, put Jesus out of the picture because it's just easier. No, I won't speak up in work about that issue because, well, I don't know what will happen at the end of it. It's just better and easier to stay silent. No, I won't have that awkward conversation with my children or my parents because it's just better. But actually what Caiaphas teaches us here is that God is in control of all these things. And what we really need to do is look to Jesus and trust in him. And so we see here in this the irony of people not seeing who Jesus truly is or what he can do for us. They are not willing to follow after him for many different things or reasons. They make false assumptions and have a false confidence. And what happens in the remainder of the chapter is that they basically make their preparations. They've made their decision, and so now they make their preparations. Jesus, knowing what's going to happen, knowing that the time is not just yet, he moves away, so he's no longer going about publicly. And then it's time for the Passover. And so they make their preparations for the Passover. They go and have their ceremonial cleansing. And again, there's an irony here that as they go to cleanse themselves, in order that they might take the Passover, they are willing in their hearts to hand over an innocent man. They have murderous intents in their hearts while they come to wash their hands before God. And so they make their preparations, but God is in control of all these things. And as they prepare ceremonially, as they prepare looking out for Jesus, that they might murder him, they miss the very thing that's right in front of their face. The thing that they desire most of all is right there. And so the question is, do we truly see who Jesus is? And are we willing to follow him above all? Gideon, thank you.